There is this idea that fertility rates have simply dropped in Western Europe, in the United States, in Canada, in many countries around the world, simply because childbearing women choose to have fewer children. And it's exclusively a choice, and it's an intentional choice. And that it's driven exclusively by the desire to have children later in life, to pursue other non-childbearing goals earlier in life. But what you heard from Lyman in his research, and frankly, what a lot of us who just have the conversation with our peer group, with our family members, with people in our community, it's much more complicated than that. And the part of the research that I really like that Lyman pursues is this difference between what surveys can pick up when they ask very generalized questions about what's happening in your family and your preferences, and what's left unsaid. So one thing that a survey has a hard time picking up, or used to have a hard time picking up, it can pick up how many kids you have. It can pick up the pace with which you and the society had kids. But it didn't really ask, how many did you want? And there's this theory that we simply have fewer children because women and married couples and others just want fewer kids. The data and some of Lyman's research and some other research that's now much more readily available to us says otherwise. A lot of the research would indicate that couples actually don't want fewer kids. Individuals don't necessarily want fewer kids. It is the conditions in which they are living today that simply make it difficult for them to achieve their goals of having the size of the family that they ideally would like to have. And this includes women, many of whom report they would love to have a family of 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 kids, but they're not having any. Not by choice necessarily, but by the fact they're having a hard time finding the right mate. They're having a hard time affording even the basic needs to raise a child, including decent housing in a safe community. And we're hearing that it's just getting harder to do that earlier in life. So it's not that people don't want to have kids. In fact, I can argue that the pace of this is not significantly different now than it ever was before. There's a pretty good case to be made, a pretty good argument to be made, that people want as many kids now as they ever did. Women want to have as many, men want to produce as many heirs, that this is not necessarily a big societal change that 100 years ago people wanted 8 kids and now they only want, 2. People had to have those 8 or 9 kids for economic reasons in the past, and people may only be having 1 or no kids now, also for economic reasons. So it's a very different lens to look at this issue through. It's not about preference. Those preference changes aren't that dramatic. It's the economic conditions. It's the health conditions. It's the social conditions. It is the political conditions, potentially. So I hope that as you listen to this program and you think about this in your own life and you bring up this conversation at work or in your community or with your family members, that we change this dynamic a little bit, that let's not talk about this in terms of the preferences have somehow changed. It's the reality of people's lives that have changed. It is the conditions of family formation that have changed. It is just harder. It's just harder. You talk to any young person out there today, they'll tell you it's just harder than it used to be to form committed relationships, to raise children, to afford to raise children in a way that fits the preferences of the way they want to raise those children, and being able to do that at the time of their life that they would prefer to do so.